Minutes, students and school presentations, parent groups, open to the public, 3 minutes per speaker for no longer than 60 minutes. We'll have our superintendent's report, our correspondence and board comments. We'll have our personnel agenda, our consent agenda. We will not be using our second executive session, and we'll adjourn the meeting. May I have a motion for previous minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes of the previous regular meeting held on Monday, August 26, 2013, as circulated. Second.
Comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Do we have any student or school presentations tonight? Any parent groups? Okay, open to the public. Who would like to speak? Yes, Dennis.
Thank you, Madam President. Here somewhere. Yes. Good evening, folks. Dennis Pavlok, community resident. I'm here tonight as a partner to the school district. I've been coming here so long, actually, I should be grandfathered in, I don't know. But anyway. I'd like to start off with reminding the school board and the community that we have failure to follow Project SAVE. And I'd like to remind this board and the community what Project SAVE is and what it does. To address school safety and violence prevention, Safe Schools Against Violence in Education Act, Project SAVE, was passed by New York State Legislature and signed into law by Governor George Pataki on June 24, 2000. When do the plans have to be developed? Plans need to be developed and adopted by the Board of Education or Chancellor in New York City by July 1st, 2001, reviewed and updated annually by July 1st of each succeeding year. We're late, again, on my public hearing, for me to come and give comments on safety in this district. We're late 2013, we're late in 2012, we're late in 2011, we're late in 2010, we're late in 2009, so on and so forth. Keep going back as long as I've been coming here. We've been late on that public hearing. One superintendent asked me, tried to pose off as Project SAVE to be a local resolution. It's not a local resolution, it's a state law. But yeah, we continue year after year to ignore it, shove it under the rug, and push it on the bottom of the filing cabinet. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous. Pursuant to Commissioner's Regulation Section 155.17E3, this plan will be made available for public comment at least 30 days prior to its adoption. The district-wide plan may be adopted by the school board after at least one public hearing. Like I said, we haven't had it. That should have been the last board meeting in June. Should have been prepared to have it, at then. We haven't had it, like I said. What are we supposed to be requiring to do? The only thing this district pretty much does is have a go-home drill. Huh? How does that prepare us for a school shooting? How does that prepare us for an intruder coming into a building? I'm not saying it's not good to have. However, we're on the cusp of everything. we're not deep, a little bit deeper than we should be digging. So, let me say this. Describe the policies and procedures for annual multi-hazard drills, and here they are. For example, multi-hazard school safety training for staff and students, what Dee explained. And these procedures such as, which we do now, early go-home drill, a tabletop exercise, which we don't do, a live drill, you don't do that either. So, on that end of it, I'm just wondering, when is this process going to be changed? Because, like I said, there's community members such as myself out there waiting to come give ideas and suggestions on how to improve safety. And keep in mind, we're all not just residents that go to work and come home and do the same thing everybody else does. We're educated. We're knowledgeable. We're not mothers with kids. We're lawyers. We're in all kinds of facets of jobs. My second concern tonight is bullying. I know we have one of those forms right here. Dignity for all students. I read it 3 times. I like what's on the paper. But however, to enact dignity would mean ending all bullying. And as my last information somebody told me in Roundbound Middle School, we have personnel following students around. That's not addressing bullying, folks, in my interpretation. Maybe that's changed. I don't know. I haven't got an update since. But I will, because someone will tell me. They come to me. I'm like a magnet. So all these challenges that, Superintendent, you outlaid here in the September 3rd article, all these challenges, and I agree. Performance review evaluation, everybody, and all these tests that are upcoming means absolutely nothing if we can't get bullying under control. Because bullying doesn't just affect one family or one student. At last count, it affects everybody. Community upon community. 2/3 of all gun shooters have been bullied. 2/3. But yeah, that's just a statistic. Hasn't happened here. In this community, oh, it doesn't. However, that's just my concern. So I'd like to just to say that, to our listening audience at home, if, I've been asking for it since 2000, a public hearing. We're supposed to follow it. We don't do it, though. Why? The community should be asking. I'm going to have flyers, Spirit of Dignity, to remind people. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Would someone else like to speak?
Good evening. Aisha Benson. I have a daughter in the 11th grade here at the high school. I was wondering if you could provide some more clarity on the Title I status for the school, for the district. I would like to know what the actual failure and graduation rates were that's been identified, and if we're getting at the root of the problem. And what are some steps that are involved in the corrective action plan? So I think it's nice that a letter was sent home, but there's so many unanswered questions, and in what way are we going to be able to learn more and then participate in the process of helping our kids to succeed?
Would you like to offer her any assistance?
So I think part of what would be helpful, obviously we want the parents to be involved and engaged. We had to submit our plan to the state at the end of August, and I don't see any reason why, certainly once we get some feedback from the state, that we can't do a presentation explaining to the community what's in the plan.
When do you expect to hear back?
That goes through Mr. Tim's office, but we certainly can keep you updated at the board meetings as to when we'll be able to come and do the presentation. I just want to make sure that what we're presenting to the public is actually the final version that the state signed off on.
Do we know what the graduation rate was?
I don't have the number memorized. I know it was in the mid to low
70%.
60s.
70% graduation. And when they speak of failure rates, are they referring to regions, or is that also tied to graduation?
There's issues regarding performance. So in other words, how the students are performing on a variety of the state
So
assessments.
that's at all levels, all state assessments?
Well, for sure, we have issues in the middle and high school. So those two buildings in particular, from the position of the state, have issues relative to student performance in some categories.
Would anyone else like to speak?
I'm Edward Benson.
Mr. Benson, could you come to the podium so we can be sure to hear you? And so that the listening audience at home can also hear you?
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Edward Benson. I have a daughter here at VHS in the 11th grade, and that was my wife, Aisha Benson, just speaking. I figured I'd continue a couple of questions. My first question is there a copy of the school district report card available for the parents to pick up? You mentioned that your plan had been submitted in August. If you have any idea that you can share with us this evening, what are the implementation deadlines? Are there any particular benchmarks that have been set in the plan that you submitted? Is there anything regarding the teachers that have underperformed? And what I mean by underperforming, in that there are students passing the class but yet failing the Regents exam for that class. Did the school board include in its plan anything regarding racial disparity in the pass failure statistics at Beacon High School? And I think you did answer this part of the question. Will the parents and or community leaders be involved in the final development and implementation of said plan?
So I think, just to provide a little clarity, the report had to be to the state by the end of August, so I think the actual date was the 30th of August, so it just went to them. We don't have the feedback yet, so I think it might be best to present it in its entirety once we get to that point. The last thing that you had raised, if you don't mind repeating.
The last one.
Racial disparity.
No, after the disparity, there was another.
Will the parents and community leaders be involved in the development and implementation?
So part of, and actually this is a good venue to be able to get this point out, part of what shows up in the plan is that we want to have increased community engagement. So that's part of the reason why I said I think it would be a good idea to present the plan once we consider it to be totally finalized. But we want parents to be involved in the school. We want parents' input on what's happening in the school. So when we have that, I'd love it if you were to come out and you can certainly ask more detailed questions about the plan at that
I
point.
think that kind of prompts a follow-up question. With wanting more parent and community involvement, what exactly are you looking at doing to get more parent and community involvement? Because obviously sending a letter out won't do.
The letter was a state requirement.
Figured that.
Yeah. There are times when we are going to be doing outreach, and then other times when we're meeting the requirements. That was more of a requirement issue. So I think as we go through the year,
A little bit more definitive for me when you say outreach.
we want to have parents involved as partners. I had a conversation, just for an example, I had a conversation with a parent today, talking about some things sort of going on in school, and part of what I shared with the parent was, we want you to feel comfortable coming to the teacher if there's questions, or coming to the administrator, and only really by doing that can we become aware if there's issues that we need to be aware of so that we can do a better job the next time. So that's, if you're asking for examples of how we can do that, I would say trying to make sure to establish those clear lines of communication so that people feel comfortable coming in and talking about questions, issues, whatever they are at the time that they're happening. Just as one example.
In the interim of the plan being, set to the state, which was August 30th, and we are now September the 9th, technically second week of school, what interim, things are we doing so that we're on track, for our students having a better success rate by the end of the school year? Since we definitely do, unless you have a time frame in which the state is to respond, which is usually when they get to you.
I think probably I would still echo what I said a minute ago, that we'll have the plan presented and we'll ask questions at that time. The teachers and administrators are going to be working on now they know what is in the plan, how are they going to implement it. So I haven't had a chance to have those conversations yet.
So the teachers know what's in the plan?
No, the plan was just submitted. That's what I'm saying. So now we have to, the next step is to be working with deeper down in the organization to have those conversations.
But just to give you an idea, because I did see the plans,
Okay.
teams were put together in order to create the plan, and a parent was included, at least one parent was included on that team, as well as teachers and administrators from each of the buildings, and each building had their own plan. So Beacon High School had a plan, Robout Middle School had a plan.
So, but my question is, what is the interim implementation of that plan? And is there a time frame in which that plan will be implemented? Or are we just sitting back waiting for the state before we take the next step?
I guess I'll answer it this way. I started here July 1. My work for the last 2 months has been around getting to know the district, trying to understand the issues, and in fact, be working with the board in the coming weeks to clearly lay out what the goals are. And that's in part because I think the administrators and the teachers need to know what direction are we going to follow. So
And I respect that, but we do not have the benefit or the luxury of being patient.
Thank you.
My wife reminded me that. Do you have any comment regarding the school board's plan for the racial disparity and the pass failure statistics in the school district?
We haven't put a plan in place. Aisha, you had asked the question about the state scores and were they available, and those scores can be obtained by anybody, any parent, by going to the state website. And there's some very interesting information.
Well, but he's asking, I would answer it, except for you're talking about a board action in the past. If I'm understanding you correct.
I'm asking if there's action presently. I understand what's been done in the past, which hasn't improved the disparity rate. So is there something in the current plan that addresses that?
But I believe that there is an improvement in the disparity rate, and that improvement I believe can be seen within the state scores from the website.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Great.
Can I just ask a question? Okay.
No, you can go ahead.
Just wanted to ask a quick one. I never really let this one out. What provisions, if any, do we have for our gay and lesbian students here in this district? Give that some thought. Thank you.
Do I have to use this? I
You
can't.
can pull
Bend
it
it down.
down towards you a bit. There you go.
All right. So my name is Karine Hendrickson, and I've been attending Beacon High School for 4 years. And this is my last year I'm a senior. And in these 4 years, I've noticed like some singling out from the security. Like, you know, if a student was walking down the hallway, one student has headphones in, another student has headphones in, they single out a certain student and they won't say anything to the other student. And I've noticed that a lot, and I've noticed that this year also, even though the year just started. Can we do something about that? Like, do you?
I believe that's something that the superintendent can look into through Dr. Sieberding in the high school. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. Would anyone else like to speak? Okay, thank you. The superintendent's report?
So as I told you earlier, at the beginning of the board meeting, we'd had a workshop, and I had already made the comments there, basically just thanking all the employees. So I don't have any additional comment at this time.
Okay. Do we have any correspondence or board comments? I would just like to thank all the administrators. As a last-minute decision, we decided, Dr. Dorward and I, to visit all the buildings. I thought that because we'd done it in the past, that it was something that was always done, and I think I sprung it on him. And then we popped into each of your buildings. Thank you for opening your doors and showing us the excitement of both you and your staff. It's really great to see the kids on opening day, and you know, we were joking in South Avenue School they were falling asleep, but in other buildings, you know, there were different levels of how awake they were. I think that the buildings look great, all of the changes. I was really happy to see all the cameras in the buildings and the excitement of our administrators to have those cameras, and I think safety is truly, you know, a focus that we've all realized we need to open our arms to and work towards. So congrats to everybody on a smooth opening, and let's have a great year. Okay, thank you. May I have a motion for personnel agenda?
Motion to approve the personnel agenda items A through O as attached.
Second.
Comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. May I have a motion for consent agenda?
Motion to approve consent agenda items 12.02 through 12.08 as listed on the agenda.
Second.
Comments or questions?
I do have a question of the wording for the Dignity for All Students Act. There's one part of it, maybe I'm nitpicking, I mean, I certainly understand what the sentiment is, but I mean, there are times where other people will look at what we've written and put it in our policies and tear it apart. And there's one part in there that says, you know, it starts off, all students have the responsibility to treat each other with caring and respect. It's the next sentence I have a question about. No student shall be treated differently or unfairly because of actual or perceived differences. Differently, we do treat people differently. I mean, on purpose and legitimately so. I mean, for example, someone with disabilities, they get all sorts of accommodations for their disabilities. I don't disagree with that, but according to this, I should not treat them differently because of disability. Same thing with the policies we have tonight regarding the student evaluations. Someone who speaks only a foreign language gets special accommodations for that as well. So there's another reason we're treating someone differently because of most likely their nationality. So I'm just concerned about saying, well, we won't treat anybody differently because of certain classifications, and because I know legitimately we do, and we're supposed to. You know, So I'm just concerned about that wording, if that's going to be what other people look at and say, why are you treating them differently? It's no different than, same thing, I don't believe we do it, but, affirmative action that takes place in a lot of hirings and, schools, things like that. And, once again, that's another place where you are treating people differently because of their race. So I just not sure if that word differently is the appropriate usage. I mean, I know what it means, but,
Yes, Mike?
That Dignity Act insert to the Code of Conduct was written within a certain context, and it was written in a context that prohibited harassment or discrimination against students, not only on the bases that are set forth in the Dignity Act, but on any basis, on any perceived difference. So, taking that sentence in isolation, I think your point has merit. However, the overall context is we're not going to treat children, we're not going to allow them to be subjected to harassment or discrimination on the basis of actual or perceived differences. So I think it's in that overall context that language was written.
is that overall language, is that going to be available anywhere for the public? Because, like I said, I agree, if this is just a little bit by itself, but this is what's going into our code of conduct. And so in the absence of the larger context, my concern is people will object to, or will come back to us and say that you are treating people differently.
But even the lead-in paragraph sort of sets the context, I believe, so it's talking about harassment and bullying.
Right, but is that what we're meaning by treating people differently?
That's the context in which I understood that insert to have been written.
Okay. You'll be able to defend it if somebody comes up and complains about us treating people differently because of where it is currently legal to treat them differently.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And remember, the title is Dignity for all students. So
It's usually the people who are not treated differently that complain about the ones who
Right.
are being treated differently. But that's what I'm just saying.
Any further questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn the meeting.